starter. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen King.
How
are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine. You don't look like a guy who would be filled with frightening thoughts.
Neither did Norman Bates.
Norman Bates is a frightening fellow himself. What makes people frightened, and how do you get it down on paper?
Well, I think people are frightened of almost anything, you know, as far as the unknown, anything unexpected, anything that's going to jump out of them, at them in the dark. You know, I remember the final scene in Carrie where the hand comes up out of the grave and grabs Amy Irving. If you can get people with their defenses down and get them in the open, you can grab them and do a job on them, and that's what I like to do.
What, did you always have these thoughts inside of you, or did you just see it as a way to make money as a writer?
No, really, I didn't go to the market. The market came to me. As far back as I can remember, I've been interested in ghosts and goblins and things that go bump in the night. And in the early 70s, I was writing stories for those magazines where if you hold them up by the side, a picture falls out, and you don't show your mother, that kind of thing, and getting anywhere from $100 to $200 to $300 for stories. My wife and I were just married. I was working in a laundry, and she would say, "Hurry up and think of a monster," whenever the bills came due. So I did the best I could.
Has there ever been anything that frightened you in real life that's made it into a story? Anything out of your childhood that turned up as a book?
Yeah, there are a lot of things, and I suppose the one thing that scares all little kids is the boogeyman, the thing in the closet. And, you know, I can remember Bill Cosby's rap about covers. Covers are magic. You know that there's nothing under the bed, and you know that if you keep your feet under the covers, it will never grab you anyway. And even as a grown-up, I think that as children we fear these things, and we let our fears out. We tell people because we're unsophisticated. And as we get older, we still have the fears. We just supplement them, you know, and we don't tell people. But still, most people, when they're alone in the dark, things that you would laugh at in the daylight begin to seem a little bit like Technicolor.
There's always a period for me when between the time you get in bed and the time you fall asleep, where stuff doesn't make correct sense. And I remember as a kid thinking that I was wake up in a real cold sweat out of that gray period, thinking that the bed was covered with snakes. And when you get to examining it, of course, it was covered with snakes. It was an ugly joke that my parents played with me, but it would just be lumps and folds of the thing. Why do people like to be scared like that? Why do you kind of things sell so well?
Well, on the simplest level, I think people like to be scared. About the same as the old joke about the guy who beat his head against a wall, and somebody said, "Well, why do you keep doing that?" And he said, "It feels good when I stop." And I think that if you're being scared out of your wits, when the scare ends, when the lights go up, or when the book ends, you know, you say to yourself, "I thought things were bad for me, but at least I'm not in that position. You know, I'm not stuck in the haunted hotel, or I'm not, you know, trapped with a telekinetic girl, or whatever it happens to be." Yeah.
Do you ever get communication from other people who say, "You think what you wrote about was frightening? Here's my personal."
I get a lot of letters like that, and sometimes you'll get a letter from a genuine ding-dong. I mean, most of the people who write to me are straight ahead, you know, and they say things that make sense. They're good letters, and try to answer them as much as we can. But every now and then, you get a letter from a guy who wants to come up with his Polaroid camera and photograph all your ancestors standing behind you, you know, straight line back to Adam, or something like that. Or they will tell you about the time that the ghost got them, or whatever it happens to be, and they'll seize on you as though you were a kindred spirit. You know these things yourself.
Do you find that annoying when they do that?
No, I love it.
Yeah. You live in Maine? What part of it?
We live in Western Maine. I'm not a seacoast boy. Most people, when they think of Maine, they think of the seacoast, but as far as I've ever been concerned, lobster pots are to make coffee tables out of.
Is it scary up there?
It's scary at night, in the woods, in the dark, with the loons on the lake.
Now we're getting somewhere. My guest is Stephen King this morning. His most recent work is Firestarter, and there's a picture of someone who looks a little like you, but that's not you. It's a guy who looks like an author you had to take this picture for.
Yeah, that's
the beard, eh?
That's Mr. Hyde. You got Jekyll this morning.
What about Jack Nicholson in The Shining? Were you pleased with that?
I thought he did a wonderful job in The Shining. Thank you very much.
How did you feel about the movie itself?
Well, I feel both ways. I got to see it 4 times because of some commitments one place and another. And there are an awful lot of things about that movie that I think are flawless and beautiful and just marvelous. And then there are other times when I feel as though I'd given Stanley Kubrick a live grenade and he heroically threw his body on it.
When you sell something to a motion picture company, I guess there'd be several thousand different kinds of deals, but how much control do you have of what actually gets on the screen?
Well, I've never asked for a lot of control. I'm working with a guy named George Romero now who did Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, a couple of nursery tales for younger people, you know.
Yes.
And I'll be working on a screenplay with him, and there I would expect to exercise some control as part of the film company. But as for actually selling a book to the movies, you send it off the way you send a child off to school, and you hope it will do well, and well will be done by it. But I've never asked for control. Then you're in a perfect situation. If they do a great job, you can say, "That's my book." And if they do a lousy job, you can say, "I have no control."
Right. I was pirated.
Yeah.
What about do you have children?
3.
What are the ages?
I've got a daughter who's 10, and a little boy who's 8, and another little guy who's 3.5.
Do the older kids read your works?
They've seen Salem's Lot, which was made into a TV movie, and they've seen, excuse me, the TV version of Carrie. But as far as reading the things, they've never been forbidden. But my daughter is the great reader right now, and she's really involved with horses and things like that. She's not into vampires yet.
What kind of things do you read?
Everything I get my hands on, really. I don't read really widely in the horror field. If it's something that I really want to read, I do. But I like general novels, any kind of nonfiction that looks interesting. Kind of interested in Dillinger. Someday I'd like to write a book about Dillinger and those bad guys.
Former fellow Hoosier, I believe.
Yeah.
From Indiana.
Yeah.
Tell me the difference between just a horror film and a science fiction film. They both are kind of overlapping.
Yeah, they do. And, fans argue about this.
Kind of overlapping.
Yeah, they do. And, fans argue about this. Back and forth for hours, but my idea of what a horror film is something that comes out of nothing. It's totally inexplicable. And in a science fiction movie, you say, well, we have this now, so that maybe in 20 years or 30 years, we really will be able to clone 20 years, 30 years, want to, really will be able to, that sort of thing. That sort of thing. So I see that as the difference. So I see that as the difference.
Like Star Wars, the first one, that was all fabricated. Like Star Wars, the first one, that was all 1,000 generations ago.
Yeah.
So
I see that as a fantasy, though, David, really. I see that as a fantasy. Basically, what they're saying is let's remake Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, or all the things that we remember. It has some science fiction trappings, the spaceships zoom around, but they're just saying they're there. Let's not worry about why they're there.
What, can you tell me quickly, this is your new book, are you now working on the next, this is your new book.
I'm starting to play around with an idea on paper. The ideas come and they stay for a while, and then, if they don't go away, you kind of hope that they will, because most writers are pretty lazy. And if it won't go away, finally you have to pick it up and do something with it.
Do you think of a great scary scene and then write a book to it, or does it happen the other way?
Usually what happens is, if you're writing a horror book, and this thing that I'm working on should turn out to be a real screener if it goes the way that I would want it to, you get an idea for something that's really nasty. You get an idea for something that's
It's called Fire Starter.